Hello my friends, I hope you guys are all doing well. Today we are going through my track Your Soul off my recent EP with Jauz's Bite This label. It was such a fun track to make and there's a bunch of techniques I used in there that I think could be cool for you to use in your own track. So I'm gonna be showing you how I made it, going through all the layers, and I even, as always, bounced out all the samples and all the loops so you guys can use them in your own tracks and create something cool. So without any further ado, let's get into it. All right guys, here we are in the Ableton project for Your Soul. And I'm just gonna play the end of the build into the drop so you can get a feel for what it sounds like if you haven't heard it yet. Woo, a lot of stuff going on here. Hope you guys dig this one though. Let's start with the drums in the build. So here's what it sounds like. So first thing we have is this clap with a little delay on it. And then we have, this is what's doing most of the work here, this drum build. This is being filtered. So there's a lot of pitch stuff happening here in the envelope. It's pitching up, which is a great technique for like adding energy and intensity to things. But I thought it'd be really cool if I pitched it down at the very end. So you can see it's just this one snare and then the next one comes in as another layer. Cool. And then we have a little fill here right before the drop. Just some random weird sounds. Yeah, I like recorded those and kind of turned it into a little fill. So we have that, and then we have the main motif of the song. We're kind of filtering that in, so the listeners can kind of feel it coming, kind of get a taste of what's to come. So it's a little more familiar. And then when it does drop, it's like boom, the full thing. So. Yeah, this one had a ton of processing, so it's already bounced out, but it's a low pass filter opening up with some reverb on it too, slowly going down in dry wet, so it feels like it's coming at you. And then to get that metallic effect, I'm using a delay, and it's this thing, I've heard it on like rhythm vocals, but this is what it is. It's just having a really short delay, increasing the dry wet, and playing with the feedback to get it to sound cool. But that's what's going on there. Just some little kind of teasing what's to come a little bit. And then we have some vocals and effects. In your body, in your soul. So here's the vocal. In your body. Once again, flattened. This one just had so much processing and my computer just cannot handle these things. So I have to flatten them pretty quickly, which is really good practice too. So you get used to committing to things quickly and you're not worrying about CPU issues and all that while you're producing, mixing, mastering. In your body, in your soul, in your body, in your bone, 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 bone. So you can hear I did the same thing with the vocal I did with the snare, and it creates a pretty cool effect. They're both like pitching down. So that was the goal there. And then we have just a bunch of effects. Yeah, a little like pad thing with some like weird filtering going on. And little OTT, cutting out the lows here. Some brass, just helping to fill things out. A little bit of reverb. Oh, so it's more of a wet reverb over here. So when you lower the dry wet of a reverb, it feels like something's coming at you. Because when something's really far away, it has reverb. A lot of times it'll have low end frequencies first, like when you're driving up to a music festival, you hear the bass booming first. That's because these low-end frequencies travel so far. So to make something feel like it's coming at you, kind of slowly introduce the highs and maybe slowly bring down the reverb. That was my goal here, at least. And then I have a little pad, downlifter, another downlifter, riser, atmosphere. Mostly there's not a lot of processing, it's kind of filtering. Some rain just to set the ambience. More risers. Sub. So this is a great trick for helping to fill out your build. I hear a lot of builds from tracks I get sent where they just sound really thin. And that's usually because they're just missing low end. And if you don't have like a bass you're introducing or something like that, try just having a sine wave, like an 808 or something like that, or a sub drop down there. Can really help fill things out. I have an impact, little downlifters. Yeah, and that's about it for this. Just kind of layering weird effects to fill things out. Cool. All right, let's get into the drop. So the drums, super simple. Kick. Just a really shortened kick. Not really doing anything to it. And then I'm using a kind of like a trap snare almost here. But I'm also doing a reverse on every fourth hit. Whoosh. Kind of cool to create a little variation in the pattern. And then this is what I have going on top. You can see just a bunch of like random little perks along with the hi-hat. Couple fills. I'm also creating some variation between these two little, the A section, the B section here. Each section is like 2 bars. That's what I had in mind. So I just have a little like hat loop over here doing something different. Which can be cool to create variation between your sections, is do something slightly different with the drums. That's about it going on for the drums. I increase it as time goes on, like adding more hat layers. Even more hat layers, the last part of the drop. And just the more you add new hat layers and introduce like new sounds into the drums, it helps continually add tension and build that energy. And that's what I like to do throughout my drops until the very end, where you kind of release that tension. And then so this is what we have going on aside from the drums, the sub. And I separated my sub from all these other sounds because I knew I didn't want the low end from all these other sounds. I knew I wanted one consistent sound occupying the low end, give a consistent feel, consistent levels down there, and then have everything else sit on top of that. So here's what we have with just the sub and the drums. So this was a sub drop. Let's see. Yeah. And so I just processed that a ton, EQ'd it like crazy, and then turned it into this. Pretty much playing one note. There's some subtle pitch bends in there, but it's mostly just kind of one note, and it's creating a little foundation for the rest of the stuff to sit on. And by the rest of the stuff, I mean this. So you see I'm processing these together, doing a tiny bit of compression, but I'm really just limiting it like crazy. And then EQing it, cutting out all those lows. So here's the main sound. This was made in Serum using FM, and I had to flatten it. I think I mentioned that, just CPU. And I'm creating a little reverb throw here. So doing this thing where you can kind of use reverb to create a sweep. I'll do it again. It kind of goes a little something like this. Add a little decay, have it at 0%, and then in between these hits, kind of sweep it up. So it'll be like this maybe. You see, it can be pretty cool. So I did that in a subtle way. And that's what I had at first. And I just realized I needed to layer a lot more stuff around it to make it interesting. Because here's just that. Sounds pretty empty, right? So I just layered a ton of other stuff. Just dropping stuff in, seeing what works, adding layers to that. Just weird sounds, some Foley, me clucking. Just a bunch of random. Some sirens in the background. And all together, here's that section. And then I kind of have this little like B section where I, instead of kind of like a well, like make it a little more choppy, create a little contrast. And let me solo some of these. And so there's some processing going on in some of these, like this one. This was the main one. Just doing some distortion or saturation with the captator. Compressing it a little bit, EQing it. Most of these I didn't EQ though, because I wanted to leave that up to as a group so they all kind of get EQ'd, processed as a whole. So my advice, if you're trying to create some kind of motif like this, it's to first find that the first kind of piece that catches your attention. For me, it was this. The main kind of melodic piece, and then just throw stuff into your DAW and try and layer it on top of that. Like drag in loops, record crazy stuff. Whatever you can, just drop it in, put it in the right key so it'll fit in the scale, and just try and hear cool things. A lot of this stuff, I'll just drag it in, and then I'll have some idea of like, what if I pitch that down and did this with that or something. So just try dragging stuff in and seeing what works, and you'll have a lot of happy accents, which is like, all my best ideas are happy accents. I didn't have an idea of like, oh, I'm gonna have it go wah, 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 and then do that. You know, just dragging stuff in, trying stuff, and be like, oh, that sounds really cool. Let me build on that idea. So that's what I'd recommend. I hope that makes sense. And if any of this doesn't make sense, if you guys have questions, just let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer any and every question. So we have that, and then just some subtle, like little background. Very subtle. Yeah, just a little bit of information in the key of the song. And so, yeah, that's what this group sounds like as a whole. And once again, processing it and then just EQing it to make sure none of the lows from these sounds are interfering with this. Because I want to make sure my low end from the sub and from my kick is coming through clean. It's not getting distorted. It's not fighting for room. And then over here, I just created a little variation on that using the same notes from that other, from the main FM synth in Serum, and then just did a different patch. So yeah, that's about it there. And then we have some effects going on. We have some vocals. A little vocal reverse sweeping into it. Let's see what else we have. Not a ton of effects. Honestly, most of like the stuff was just in that sidechain group. Little like chants. Anytime you can use like chants, grounds like, hey, yeah, and layer it on your hits, it always sounds so cool. So play with that. Little shouts. And then I use the vocal a little bit more later on here in this third part of the drop, which I definitely recommend you guys do is like if you have a main vocal right before the drop, try and like chop pieces of it into the actual drop itself. It sounds so cool. And here, like I found another vocal that sounds similar to this dude. It's not the same guy, but when you use vocals that have a similar tonality, it can kind of sound like the same person. It helps make things feel more cohesive. Whereas sometimes I'll hear songs that'll have like a vocal from like an old movie right before the drop, and then like a girl like chanting in the drop, and then like a gangster voice at the end, and it's kind of all over the place. So the more cohesive you can kind of make your vocal, doesn't mean it has to be the same, but it just kind of has to make sense. So in this case, I thought it'd be cool to all have it be a kind of a deep voice dude like this. So like, okay. yeah, so that's about all that's going on with that. This group as a whole is all going to it's all getting sidechained here in the drop. It's not getting sidechained over here, but it is in the drop. Whereas this stuff isn't. So that's why I grouped this all together so I could sidechain it, control it as one. And then last thing I'll show you is how I did the second drop, kind of a little fake out, which I think sounded pretty cool. I turned the sidechain off here, so then I'm just using some reverb. I have this little rack I use for like everything, but it's washout, which is just like reverb and delays and stuff. Some people use endless smile. You can just use a reverb if you want, but it just kind of like gets brought back in. And then underneath that, I have some other stuff, like a little alarm to let people know shit's going down. Some exhaust. Sweeping them into it. And then I have a sub drop too to fill out that low end. Because if I didn't have this, it would all of a sudden sound super thin. You know, so you usually want some kind of low end under it. In this case, when it pitches down, it kind of like is like a little release of tension. It kind of speaks to the whole fake out effect. So, yeah, I hope this makes sense, guys. Once again, all of these samples are available to download for free. I bounced out all of the samples, loops, everything, so you guys can use those in your own tracks to create some cool stuff. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to answer them. So, until next time, guys, happy producing. I'll see you soon. Peace.